This is Timur Hussain reading for reviewer Richard Wakeling. Godfall makes a good first impression. From the way sparks fly to the reflectiveness of its gaudy gold and marble halls, Godfall seems to signal the arrival of the next generation. Beyond the visual spectacle, however, lies a game that's immediately familiar and over-reliant on an amalgamation of loot-driven games from the past 8 years or so. Godfall's mixture of loot progression and third-person melee combat has been described as a new type of genre, the looter slasher. The name holds up insofar as you loot and slash things, but there's nothing about Godfall that feels intrinsically new. Diablo, Monster Hunter and Warframe make up a portion of its overt inspirations, but it manages to avoid feeling completely derivative by pulling from so many different influences at once. The issues Godfall faces occur outside of the combat, where its structure and gameplay loop are decidedly uninspired. The whole game takes place across 3 distinct realms: Earth, Water, and Air. Upon entering each biome, you're tasked with finding some kind of door that's locked by a specific number of MacGuffins. From here, you have to return to previously visited locations and defeat a number of mid-bosses, most of which are repeats of fights you've already had. Once you've slain each of these enemies and acquired the requisite amount of MacGuffins, you can open the door and fight the realm's boss. Then you simply ascend an elevator and repeat the whole process again in the next realm. This rigid framework quickly devolves into tedium and wears out its welcome long before the final credits roll 9 hours in. To make matters worse, Godfall's endgame revolves around yet more fights against the same bosses you've already clashed steels with before. There are some new wrinkles, including ways to earn new loot, a reward system that grants temporary buffs, and the prospect of failing and having to start over. But the core conceit of repeating battles to unlock loot, to repeat more battles, is not an enticing one when that's all there is to it. Part of this tedium is due to routine level and quest design that does little more than shuffle you from one battle to the next. Your objective rarely deviates from the basic task of killing everything in sight. You have no interaction with the world around you, and there's no nuance to indicate a sense of history in each locale. Enemies simply mill about, waiting to die, and the environments end up feeling like hollow set dressing. The threadbare story provides little context either, offering just enough of a reason for all the bloodshed. Godfall is a game built on monotony that would fall apart completely if the combat weren't there to prop it up. Your melee repertoire consists of light and heavy attacks, a snappy dodge, and a shield that can both block and parry incoming attacks. There's the usual assortment of gear rarities, while your weapon arsenal features everything from giant greatswords to nimble deal blades. Each weapon type is diversified by the range, speed, and cadence of its moveset, but they all share the same 4-button combo and an array of abilities that can be unlocked via a modest skill tree. Whichever weapon type you opt for will come down to personal preference, particularly since Godfall's combat is meaty and satisfying no matter which one you choose, with a palpable sense of skull-crushing weight behind each and every blow. It can also be surprisingly measured due to the fact that you can't interrupt attack animations if you need to block or dodge. This works well on paper, forcing you to learn enemy patterns and be deliberate in your actions, but it belies Godfall's emphasis on aggression. Being patient works against bosses and in one-on-one encounters, but you spend the vast majority of the game fighting mobs where speed is of the essence. However, these mechanics are undermined by the fact that dying in Godfall is so inconsequential that it's actually advantageous a lot of the time. Falling in battle simply respawns you back where you died, with all of the enemies right where you left them, whether that means they're dead or damaged. Doing so also replenishes all of your healing items, so there's little reason to avoid letting your health bar reach 0 unless you want to keep hold of any energy you've built up. This changes during boss fights, but even these are generously checkpointed each time you deplete a chunk of the boss's health. Fortunately, there is some meaningful depth beyond the combat's familiar basics. Every weapon type has 2 unique variants of special attacks called Southern and Northern techniques. You can execute these by spending energy that's gradually accumulated during the heat of battle. Aside from being a flashy display of power, these techniques are also a vital part of Godfall's Soul Shatter mechanic. By using light attacks and northern techniques, you can apply Soul Shatter build up to an enemy's health bar before switching to heavy attacks and southern techniques to bank all of that volatile energy and dish it out in the form of destructive Soul Shatter damage. There are also polarity attacks that encourage you to swap between both of your equipped weapons in the midst of battle by rewarding you with a shockwave attack and extra damage for a brief period. It's these physical abilities that really stand out during the chaos of Godfall's combat. Some loot has a chance to apply different status effects like bleeding or add fire and electric damage on top of your physical attacks, but none of this is particularly noticeable. You know when you've killed an enemy using soul shatter damage because they explode in a bright dust cloud, but the effect just kinda gets lost in the noise. As a result, Godfall's loot is defined by basic number crunching, where gear is equipped according to the highest digits and little else. Your preference for a particular weapon type will factor into this, but finding a legendary warhammer is only exciting because your damage numbers grow in size. A legendary weapon doesn't function any different to a common one, they both still have the same combo and rhythm to their attacks. Godfall's meaty combat eventually begins to wear thin after the umpteenth time of the same fight. This is a shallow game bolstered by decent combat that struggles to bear the weight of an entire game. Uninteresting loot mixed with a monotonous and grindy structure is not a good combination, and for as satisfying and fun as it can often be to hack your way through one battle after another, there's not enough here to sustain that enjoyment for more than a few hours.